Classical machine learning is powerful, but it's reaching physical limits.
What if learning itself could follow the rules of quantum physics?
Quantum machine learning projects explore learning with qubits, not bits.
These are not replacements. Today's systems are hybrid and experimental.
From quantum machine learning mini projects to real research experiments.
These projects test the boundaries of computation itself.
Most quantum machine learning projects don't chase speed, only understanding.
Our podcast explores the unknown facts behind quantum machine learning projects. Listen now.
MindQ Flow.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling, well, a pretty big one. The intersection of quantum physics and machine learning.
It's a topic that's surrounded by, let's say, a lot of hype, a lot of science fiction.
Right, and our sources for this deep dive are really all about cutting through that. They're a guide to the reality of what's called quantum machine learning, or QML.
And the reality is it's not about building some magical, all-powerful AI, at least not right now. It's about careful, disciplined experimentation.
So that's our mission today. We're going to unpack why QML even exists, what's genuinely different about it, and I think this is the most important part, what researchers are actually trying to prove with the limited hardware they have.
That last point is everything. If you misunderstand the constraints, you misunderstand the entire goal. This is a scientific instrument right now, not a product.
Exactly. So to get there, we have to start with the classical world. For decades, computing had this, this really comfortable rhythm, right?
Totally predictable. Moore's law. Machines got smaller, faster, cheaper, every single year.
And software just feasted on that. Every new transistor gave us more value, which is what fueled the whole deep learning revolution.
But that rhythm, as our sources make really clear, it's slowing down drastically.
We're hitting physical limits. I mean, actual atoms. It's getting incredibly hard and expensive to get more performance out of silicon.
And that's happening right when our problems are getting exponentially harder.
Oh, absolutely. Things like simulating a new drug molecule or a massive global logistics network. The demand for computation is exploding.
Just as the supply of easy classical games is drying up.
So you have this huge pressure. And that's the why of QML, right?
Yeah.
It's born out of that gap.
Precisely. It emerged not as a replacement, but as a potential extension. The whole idea is a careful exploration, asking, can the strange rules of quantum physics give us a new kind of tool where classical methods just hit a wall?
A specialist tool. I like that framing.
Yeah.
So, okay, we see the problem. Let's get to the how. What does quantum actually change in a learning system?
So you're combining two big ideas. Machine learning, which we know is algorithms learning from data, and quantum computing, which uses qubits.
And the key difference is the qubit itself. A classical bit, your standard computer bit, is like a light switch. It's either on or off, 1 or 0. Simple.
A qubit is fundamentally different. Because of a property called superposition, it can be a combination of both on and off at the same time.
Which completely changes how you can explore a problem. I've heard the analogy of a landscape of possibilities. You're looking for the lowest valley, the best solution.
A great analogy. A classical algorithm has to walk that landscape. It checks one path, then another, step by step.
But a quantum system, because of superposition, can sort of explore many of those paths at once. But we have to be careful here.
Very careful. This does not mean it magically checks every single option instantly. That's a huge misconception.
Right. So what is it doing?
It's using another quantum property called interference. Think of it like waves in a pond. Some waves add up and get bigger, others cancel each other out. A quantum algorithm tries to amplify the paths leading to the right answer and cancel out the paths leading to the wrong ones.
So it's not a brute force speed up, it's about reshaping the search space itself, mathematically.
Exactly. It's a different way of computing. But here's the reality check, right? We don't have these perfect, huge quantum computers to do this with.
Not even close. Which is why the sources stress that almost everything happening today is a hybrid system.
Yes. This is so critical to understand. The hybrid model is the bridge between the theory and the very limited hardware we have now. There's a division of labor.
So the classical computer, my laptop or a server, it does the heavy lifting. Data preparation, running the optimization loops, evaluating the results.
All the standard machine learning grunt work. And then, for a very specific part of the problem, it calls on the quantum circuit,
The
qubits. They perform a specific subroutine. Maybe they create a really complex feature map, something that would be incredibly difficult for a classical computer to simulate. Then they hand the result back.
This sounds like what the literature calls a variational quantum classifier, or VQC. That term comes up a lot.
It does. A VQC is a perfect example of this hybrid loop. Think of it like a neural network where one of the middle layers is a quantum circuit.
And that quantum circuit has tunable knobs, or parameters.
Exactly. The classical computer sets those parameters, sends them to the quantum chip. The chip does its calculation, and the result is measured and sent back.
And the classical computer looks at the result and says, not quite right. Let's tweak that knob a little bit. And it sends the new parameters back.
It's a constant feedback loop. The classical part does the learning, the optimization. The quantum part provides the expressive power, the unique mathematical space.
That makes so much sense. It's a practical solution because the quantum hardware just isn't ready to run the whole show yet.
Not by a long shot. It's too noisy, too small. This hybrid approach lets us use its potential without asking it to do things it can't.
Okay, so given that practical reality, what do these projects actually look like on the ground? In a university lab or, a summer project?
Well, the sources lay out a whole spectrum. You've got your beginner projects, super simple stuff.
Like classifying a handful of data points.
Exactly. Classifying M&I's digits, but maybe just 2s and 7s. Or clustering a few points on a 2D graph. The goal there isn't the answer, it's learning the process.
And that educational piece is huge now, right? With tools like Qiskit from IBM, you can write this stuff in Python.
Absolutely. The barrier to entry has plummeted. You don't need a PhD in quantum mechanics anymore to get your hands dirty, to run a small circuit on a real quantum computer through the cloud.
Which is amazing. But then you have the more serious stuff like final year academic projects.
Yeah.
And their goal is different again.
Very different. And this gets to the core of it. The real goal of current QML research is not to beat classical methods on performance.
That feels like a headline. Say that again.
The goal is not performance superiority. If you see a paper that says, our QML model was 5% faster, they are probably missing the point. The mission is to see if these quantum approaches behave differently under controlled conditions.
So, if not speed, what are they measuring? What are they trying to prove?
They're focused on a few key things. First, just feasibility. Can we even run this algorithm, or does the noise in the hardware just destroy the signal completely?
Okay, basic viability.
Then stability. How fragile is it? If there's a tiny bit of magnetic interference, does the whole thing fall apart? Then there's interpretability.
Now that's interesting. Because interpretability or explainability is a massive problem in classical deep learning. We have these giant black boxes.
Exactly. And some researchers are exploring if these quantum feature maps, which use entanglement in very specific ways, could actually lead to models that are easier to understand. Even if they're slower, a model you can interpret is incredibly valuable.
And the last one.
Comparison. Rigorous, honest comparison to classical baselines. It's about mapping the territory. Where does this new tool actually offer a different perspective?
Okay, so let's connect that research to the real world. Where are people trying to apply these proof of concept ideas?
Well, the most natural fit is in domains that are already quantum by nature. So chemistry and material science are at the top of the list.
Because simulating molecules is a quantum mechanics problem.
It is, and classical computers are mainly pretty bad at it. They have to use all these approximations. The hope is that a quantum model can capture that molecular behavior more naturally, more accurately.
Which could lead to designing better drugs or new materials for batteries. What about something less physical, like finance?
There's exploratory work there too. Small-scale optimization problems, portfolio management, logistics. They're testing if quantum-inspired ideas can offer a new angle. But again, these are small studies.
And we have to be really honest about the caveats here.
We have to. The sources are very clear on this. Today's quantum hardware is noisy, limited in size, and difficult to scale. This is the NISQ era noisy intermediate scale quantum.
So every result comes with a giant asterisk.
A giant flashing asterisk. And there's a really healthy debate in the field. Will QML provide a broad advantage, or just a few niche ones. We've already seen promising ideas that, well, it turned out there was a clever classical algorithm that could do it just as well.
So the near-term focus remains on just understanding the fundamentals.
Yes. Feasibility and understanding, not superiority. The big dreams of exponential speedups, those depend on fault-tolerant, error-corrected quantum computers that are still, a long way off.
So looking forward, say, over the next decade, what does progress look like? It doesn't sound like a sudden revolution.
No, the consensus is that it will be gradual and hybrid. Think of quantum processors becoming like GPUs.
Specialized accelerators.
Exactly. Your main program will still run on a classical machine, but for one very specific, very hard subroutine, it'll make a call to a quantum processing unit, a QPU.
And the research will just get better at identifying which subroutines are actually worth targeting with a QPU.
Right. It's a slow feedback loop. We try things, we see what works, what's noise, and we refine our questions.
This is the part I find really interesting. Beyond just the results, what does working on QML teach us? What's the deeper lesson here?
I think it forces us to rethink the relationship between hardware and software. We're designing algorithms now that are fundamentally tied to the physics of the machine in a way we haven't done for decades. We're trying to exploit things like entanglement.
And it seems like it also forces a kind of intellectual discipline. You're constantly dealing with probability and uncertainty. It's not deterministic.
It absolutely does. It gives you a much deeper appreciation for what computation even is and its connection to the physical world that enables it. It's not just abstract math anymore.
When you put it that way, the value isn't just in the final answer. It's in the process of discovery.
That's it. The value of QML right now is in the disciplined scientific inquiry. It's about setting the foundation, asking the right questions, and being brutally honest about the answers, even when they're not what we hoped for.
So just to recap, we've talked about the end of the classical rhythm, the hybrid reality of QML today, and how the focus is really on feasibility and exploration, not on breaking speed records.
A great summary.
Thanks again for this. And for everyone listening, here's a final thought to take with you. The most important outcome of today's quantum machine learning projects might not be a faster algorithm, but a better set of questions. So ask yourself, what fundamental assumption about computation, maybe that information is always a definite zero, or what assumption are you holding on to that QML forces you to question? We'll see you next time.